Recording initiated. Dr. Krixal Voss announced, his 4 primary tentacles dancing across the holographic control panel. Subject intake processing for specimen H789, designation Ranger Maya Torres, security clearance level maximum. The observation chamber gleamed with the sterile perfection that only the most advanced research facility in the galactic core could achieve. Dr. Voss adjusted his optical enhancers, focusing on the human female standing in the center of the testing chamber. She looked absurdly fragile like most of her species, with only 2 arms, 2 legs, and that ridiculously exposed epidermis. Dr. Krixal Voss called out, "Initial neural readings, please." Dr. Krixal, the facility's leading neural specialist, flicked through several data streams with his secondary appendages. Neural patterns are surprisingly coherent for such a primitive species. Though I must note the usual human irregularities, they really should have evolved better emotional control by now. Quite, Voss agreed, his skin shifting to a smug shade of violet. Lead observer Nixis, security status. Lead observer Nixis Krell's crystalline form sparkled under the laboratory lights as she conducted her 15th perimeter check in the past hour. Containment fields at triple strength, Doctor, though I still think it's excessive for such a limited creature. Protocol is protocol, Voss replied, suppressing a laugh. Even if the subject can barely handle basic quantum mathematics. Tech specialist Zara Vix chimed in from her monitoring station, her bioluminescent patches pulsing with amusement. Did you know they still use combustion engines on some of their colonies? Combustion. Might as well be rubbing sticks together. The research team shared a moment of superiority-tinged mirth, their various appendages and sensory organs quivering with barely contained condescension. Specimen appears to be. Voss consulted his data screen, smiling. Research assistant Lux. What's the psychological analysis? Lux Meridian, the youngest member of the team, consulted her notes. According to our previous studies, it's either a sign of happiness or a stress response, or possibly indigestion. Human facial expressions are frustratingly ambiguous. Voss made a notation in his log. Remarkable how they've achieved space travel with such primitive communication methods. Shall we begin the intake interview? Subject's vital signs are stable, Dr. Krixal reported, a hint of disappointment in his harmonics, though their binary cardiovascular system remains as inefficient as ever. Maya Torres stood in the center of the chamber, that inexplicable smile still on her face, apparently unaware of the extensive sensor array currently documenting every aspect of her existence. Or perhaps, Voss mused, she simply lacked the cognitive capacity to comprehend the sophistication of their equipment. Very well, Voss declared, his primary tentacles arranging themselves into the formal scientific documentation pose. Let's see what this specimen can tell us about human physiological limitations. Though I suspect we already know the answer, many. The team settled into their observation positions, each certain they were about to document yet another example of human inadequacy. None of them noticed that Maya's smile had shifted from polite to knowing, like someone about to teach a particularly memorable lesson. Now then, specimen H789, Doctor. Voss began, his vocal resonators carefully modulated to human-friendly frequencies. We will be testing your species' survival capabilities in our advanced crisis simulation chamber. Maya Torres stretched her arms casually, as if preparing for nothing more strenuous than a light workout. Got it, Doc, and you can call me Maya. H789 makes me sound like a tax form. Dr. Krixal made a sound suspiciously like a snort. The specimen attempts humor. How quaint. The simulation parameters have been set, tech specialist Zara announced, her bioluminescent patches flickering with rapid calculations. Scenario designation Omega level threat. Environmental hazards include extreme temperature fluctuations, toxic atmosphere, gravitational anomalies, and multiple system failures. Survival probability calculated at 0.0047%. Wonderful, Maya said, cracking her knuckles. Just like Tuesday at the Ranger Academy. The research team exchanged confused glances, their various appendages twitching in bewilderment. Specimen, perhaps you misunderstand, Dr. Voss said slowly, as if speaking to a particularly dense child. This is not a training exercise. The physical and psychological stresses will be very real. Death is a statistically probable outcome. Maya shrugged. Yeah, that tracks. So when do we start? Lead observer Nixis's crystalline form vibrated with irritation. Dr. Voss, I must note for the record that the specimen appears to be exhibiting signs of cognitive malfunction. Surely no rational being would volunteer for such a scenario. Listen, Sparkles Maya said, pointing at Nixis. I once had to evacuate a colony while riding a malfunctioning maintenance bot through an asteroid field. This'll be fine. Research assistant Lux frantically documented the exchange. Fascinating. The human displays classic signs of their species' infamous reality-defying optimism. Dr. Voss raised his primary tentacles in a gesture of resignation. Very well. Initiating simulation in 3, 2, 1. The chamber transformed around Maya. The sterile white walls disappeared, replaced by the twisted metal corridors of a critically damaged space station. Warning klaxons blared as emergency lights painted everything in strobing red. Atmospheric containment failing, a computerized voice announced. Reactor core breach imminent. Gravitational stabilizers offline. Have a nice day. They added that last part just to be jerks. Didn't they? Maya asked as she began sprinting down the corridor. The specimen appears to be running toward the reactor core, Dr. Frixis observed incredulously. That's exactly opposite to the evacuation route. Current internal temperature of the simulated reactor chamber is approaching 200 degrees Celsius, Zara reported. Radiation levels are, oh my, those are definitely lethal numbers. Maya's voice came through the monitors, slightly winded but annoyingly cheerful. Hey, if anyone's keeping score, I think I just found the source of the containment breach. Gonna try something stupid. The specimen's vital signs are approaching critical levels, Dr. Frixis announced, his neural tendrils curling in anticipation of imminent human failure. Heart rate elevated, blood pressure soaring, cellular damage accumulating. Death should occur in approximately 47 seconds. Did she just? Is she attempting to reroute plasma coolant with her bare hands? Lead observer Nixis asked, her crystalline structure flickering with disbelief. That's not possible, Dr. Voss stated flatly. The heat alone would. Coolant rerouted, Maya's voice crackled through the speakers. Though I definitely don't recommend touching plasma conduits without gloves. Bit spicy. Spicy, Lux repeated, adding another note. Subject uses inappropriate culinary terminology to describe severe radiation burns. Vital signs are. This can't be right, Dr. Frixis muttered. She should be dead. The readings indicate fatal damage to multiple organ systems, and yet. Next problem, Maya called out cheerfully, her voice now raspier from the toxic atmosphere she was breathing. Anyone know if human bones are supposed to make this many cracking sounds in low gravity? Dr. Voss stared at the monitors, his skin cycling through shades of disbelief. Begin recording special notation. Human capacity for biological impossibilities may have been marginally underestimated. The research team watched in growing horror as their carefully calculated lethal scenario turned into what the specimen kept referring to as, much to their confusion, just another Monday. Warning. Warning. Gravitational systems reaching critical failure, the station's AI announced with inappropriate serenity. Reactor containment failing. Structural integrity at 12%. Thank you for choosing Galactic Standard Life Support Systems. Dr. Voss watched the catastrophe unfold with professional detachment. Note for the record, subject's persistence, while admirable, has reached its logical conclusion. Multiple compound fractures detected, Dr. Frixis reported, his neural tendrils vibrating with scientific satisfaction. Massive internal hemorrhaging. Cellular decay accelerating. Ah, and there goes the liver. Maya's voice, now barely a whisper, crackled through the dying communication system. Almost. Got it. Just need to bypass the last fail-safe. Is she still trying to save the reactor? Lead observer Nixis asked incredulously. The simulation parameters show total system collapse in 10 seconds. 5 seconds, Zara corrected, her bioluminescent patches dimming respectfully. 4, 3, 2. The observation screens exploded with warnings as a massive gravitational wave tore through the simulated station. Maya's body, already broken from radiation and toxic exposure, slammed against 3 different bulkheads before coming to rest in a crumpled heap. Clinical death confirmed at 14:27 station time, Dr. Frixis announced with barely concealed triumph. 0 electrical activity in all brain regions, complete cardiovascular failure, cell death cascading through all major systems. Dr. Voss raised his primary tentacles in a gesture of scientific closure. As expected, the human form, while surprisingly tenacious, simply cannot overcome basic physical limitations. Begin preparing final data analysis for. Dr. Research Assistant Lux interrupted, her voice quavering. Something's wrong with the monitors. Impossible, Dr. Frixis snapped. Death is death, Even humans must submit to fundamental biological. A single spike appeared on the neural activity monitor. Then another. And another. No, Dr. Voss whispered, all four of his eyes widening in disbelief. This violates every known law of. Maya's body twitched. Her shattered right arm moved, fingers curling around a piece of debris. Her head lifted, blood-matted hair falling away from eyes that should have been lifeless but instead burned with irritated determination. Rude, she croaked, using the debris to lever herself up. Was in the middle of something. The entire research team stared in horror as their very dead specimen stumbled to her feet, multiple broken bones visibly shifting under her skin. Right, Maya muttered, limping toward the reactor controls. Where was I? Oh yeah, fail-safe bypass. This is a malfunction, lead observer Nixis declared, her crystalline form practically vibrating with denial. The sensors are wrong. The simulation is glitched. Humans don't just. Reactor stabilized, Maya announced, spitting out what appeared to be several teeth. Anyone got a bandage? Paper cut from the manuals, getting blood everywhere. Dr. Voss's skin had turned a shade of gray previously unknown to his species. Begin new research log, he whispered. Topic humans. Preliminary hypothesis what the actual. The rest of his statement was drowned out by the sound of Maya asking if anyone wanted to go get coffee after she finished putting her ribcage back where it belonged. This defies every known law of biology. Dr. Frixis shouted, his neural tendrils twisted into knots. Beings don't just restart. Death is a terminal condition. Dr. Voss paced the observation deck, all four of his tentacles twitching spasmodically. There must be a scientific explanation. Perhaps. Perhaps the human healing factor has been drastically underestimated. Healing factor tech specialist Zara screeched, her bioluminescent patches strobing in distress. Her heart stopped beating for 6 minutes. She had 14 compound fractures. 3 of her organs turned to liquid. Actually, Maya's voice came through the speakers, pretty sure it was 4 organs. That last gravitational wave did something weird to my pancreas. The specimen can still speak, lead observer Nixis noted, her crystalline form vibrating at a frequency that threatened to shatter nearby equipment. Why can the specimen still speak? More importantly, why is it still moving? Research assistant Lux frantically compared readings. Previous human studies never indicated. Wait. According to these numbers, her cellular regeneration rate has increased by 800%. That's nice, Maya commented as she crawled through a maintenance shaft, dragging her still realigning leg behind her. By the way, you've got a plasma leak in Section 7. Might want to fix that before it hits the oxygen recyclers. The specimen is providing maintenance advice, Dr. Voss said weakly. The clinically dead specimen is providing maintenance advice. How Dr. Frixis demanded, neural tendrils now completely frazzled. How are you even conscious? Your brain activity ceased. We recorded complete neural death. Yeah, that happens sometimes, Maya replied casually. Had worse during basic training. This one time, Commander Chen made us run laps in vacuum when we were late for class. Now that was rough. The entire research team stared at the monitors in horrified silence as Maya, despite missing several presumably important pieces of her anatomy, continued methodically addressing each system failure. Dr. Zara whispered, her patches now pulsing in anxious green. She's approaching the antimatter containment section, the one we specifically designed to be impossible to survive. Excellent, Dr. Voss said, his voice carrying a slight hysterical edge. Surely this will provide data to explain the previous anomaly. No biological entity could possibly survive antimatter exposure. It's simply not. Oh hey, found the problem, Maya interrupted. Your containment field's oscillating at the wrong frequency. Simple fix, just need to. There we go. She's touching the containment controls, lead observer Nixis reported, her voice rising several octaves, with radiation burns, and compound fractures, and technically no blood pressure. Fascinating, Lux muttered, still taking notes. Subject appears to be ignoring catastrophic injuries through what humans call sheer stubbornness. Did she just, Dr. Frixis began, reset the antimatter containment field while missing a lung? Yes, Dr. Voss finished, his skin now cycling through previously undocumented colors. Pretty sure the lungs growing back, Maya offered helpfully. Feels tingly. Like pins and needles, but more exploding. Why? Growing. Back, Zara repeated faintly. More data points required, Dr. Voss declared, his scientific training warring with his growing existential crisis. We must understand this. Complete violation of universal constants, Dr. Frixis suggested. Breakdown of reality itself, Nixis added. Tuesday, Maya contributed cheerfully. Warning, the station AI announced. Critical system failure in hydroponics. Toxic spores detected. Lethal concentration reached in 5 minutes. Sweet, Maya said, already limping toward the new crisis. Always wanted to try space gardening. Dr. Voss turned to his team, all 4 eyes wild with scientific desperation. New research priorities. Forget baseline human capabilities. I want to know how they're able to simply ignore death, Lux suggested. Precisely. This goes beyond mere cellular regeneration or survival instinct. They're somehow overriding fundamental rules of existence through spite, Maya called out as she disappeared into a ventilation shaft. It's mostly spite. The research team watched their monitors in mute horror as their subject, still technically registering as deceased on several instruments, began humming what appeared to be an ancient Earth battle song called Another One Bites the Dust. Catastrophic systems cascade detected in hydroponics. The station AI announced. Toxic spore concentration at lethal levels. Neural toxins dispersing through ventilation. Have a pleasant death experience. These system announcements are getting sassier, Maya noted, her voice now slurred from what Dr. Voss's readings suggested was complete nervous system shutdown. The spores are literally dissolving her brain tissue, Dr. Frixis reported, his neural tendrils now completely numb from stress. Each breath is introducing enough toxins to kill 17 standard humanoids. 23 now, Zara corrected, her bioluminescence reduced to a terrified flicker. Maya stumbled through the green-tinted air, skin turning interesting colors as various organs decided they'd had enough of existing. Almost got the filtration system. Just need to. Oh, that's not supposed to be that color. Which organ is she referring to? Lead observer Nixis asked, morbidly fascinated. All of them, Dr. Voss replied, watching in horrified fascination as Maya's internal structure underwent what could only be described as spontaneous rearrangement. Brain function ceasing, Dr. Frixis announced. Again, this time with. Are those psychedelic patterns in her neural map? The toxins are causing complete cellular breakdown, Zara reported. She's basically soup at this point. Maya collapsed next to the filtration controls, managing one last thumbs up before her body finally surrendered to basic biochemistry. Fixed it, she wheezed. Then she melted. Time of second death, 1543 station time, Dr. Voss declared. Caused literally everything. Finally, Nixis sighed. Now we can begin proper analysis of this aberrant. The soup is moving, Lux interrupted. The puddle that had been Maya Torres was indeed moving. More specifically, it was reforming, accompanied by sounds that physics insisted shouldn't exist. Oh, come on, Dr. Frixis shouted as Maya's skeleton reassembled itself with a series of cheerful clicks. This isn't even remotely possible. Maya stood up, organs squelching back into approximately correct positions. Note to self: green glowing spores, not great for digestion. This is beyond science, Dr. Voss whispered. Beyond reason. Beyond reason. Hey, anyone hungry? Maya asked, brushing off the remains of liquefied tissue. Dying always gives me the munchies. Hungry, Zara's voice cracked. You were literally dead. Again, your brain turned into organizational charts. Yeah, that happens, Maya shrugged, bones audibly settling into place. Though the charts thing is new, usually it's just interpretive dance patterns. The research team watched in helpless terror as their specimen, who had now survived conditions that would reduce most species to their component atoms, started checking the hydroponics equipment for damage. Dr. Lux said quietly, I believe we may need to revise our understanding of human durability. Revise, Dr. Voss repeated faintly. We need to burn every textbook ever written and start over from scratch. Also, Maya called out, your mushroom section is on fire. Want me to handle that? 5 voices screamed no simultaneously, but she was already skipping toward the flames, humming something about disco infernos. Dr. Krixal Voss stared at the mountain of data pads surrounding his workstation, all 4 eyes bloodshot from 3 straight days of analysis. None of this makes sense. None of it. Doctor, please, research assistant Lux pleaded. You need to rest. You haven't engaged in proper molecular redistribution since the experiment began. Rest, Voss laughed, a sound that made his colleagues' appendages twitch nervously. How can I rest when everything we know about biology, physics, and death itself is being casually violated by a human who treats fatal injuries like minor inconveniences? Through the observation window, Maya could be seen doing one-armed push-ups, her other arm currently regenerating from the latest incident involving the reactor core and what she called a slight case of atomic dissolution. 57, she counted cheerfully. 58. This would be easier with both arms. The specimen has died 8 more times since the hydroponics incident. Dr. Frixus reported, his neural tendrils now permanently twisted into anxiety knots. Causes of death include molecular disassembly, temporal displacement, quantum tunneling gone wrong, and, checking my notes, spontaneous conversion into mathematical equations. That last one was weird, Maya commented between push-ups. Did you know the square root of death tastes like grape soda? She's breaking down the fundamental barriers between existence states, Voss shouted, tentacles flailing at his research notes. She's treating the boundary between life and death like it's a minor traffic regulation. Tech specialist Zara hadn't stopped trembling since watching Maya reassemble herself from pure energy the day before. The reading suggests she's actually getting faster at regeneration, like death is just an inconvenient habit she's trying to break. Perhaps lead observer Nixis suggested, her crystalline form clouded with stress fractures, we should terminate the experiment before she accidentally discovers immortality or turns the facility into a new form of sandwich. Too late, Maya called out. Did that yesterday during the quantum physics anomaly. Pretty tasty, actually. Needs more mayo, though. Dr. Voss pressed his primary tentacles against his sensory organs. How? By every known law of science, you shouldn't exist. Your cellular structure has been completely destroyed 14 times. Your consciousness has been erased, scattered across dimensions, and turned into interpretive dance. Yeah, Maya agreed, switching to one-finger push-ups. But I hadn't finished the mission checklist. Dying would have left paperwork incomplete. Nobody likes incomplete paperwork. That's not how death works, Dr. Frixus screamed, finally snapping. You can't just decide not to be dead because you have outstanding tasks. Maya paused her exercises, looking thoughtful. Have you tried? Like really tried? Because honestly, death's more of a suggestion once you get used to it. Dr. Lux whispered, backing away from Voss's increasingly unstable expression. Your skin is turning ultraviolet. That's not supposed to be possible for our species. Nothing is supposed to be possible, Voss ranted, his tentacles now typing on 7 data pads simultaneously. Reality is supposed to have rules, constants, not whatever this is. If it helps, Maya offered, I did turn in my mission completion form. Signed it in antimatter, too. Very professional. The research team watched in horrified fascination as their lead scientist's body began cycling through colors visible only to theoretical physics equations. New hypothesis, Voss declared, eyes wild. Humans don't obey universal constants because they don't believe in them. They just. Wing it, Maya suggested helpfully. That's not a scientific principle, Frixus howled. Seems to work, though, Maya shrugged, her regenerated arm finally popping back into existence with a sound that made quantum mechanics cry. Nixis's crystalline form developed several new dimensions of stress patterns. We need to inform the Galactic Council. This changes everything we thought we knew about human capabilities. About that, Maya said, stretching her brand new arm. Humanity's known about this for ages. We just didn't mention it because we thought everyone could do it. You mean other species actually stay dead? That seems really inconvenient. The entire research team stared at her in blank incomprehension as reality itself seemed to hiccup around them. Speaking of inconvenient, Maya added, your experimental singularity is about to hiccup. Want me to go fix that too? 5 voices shouted no, but she was already jogging toward the quantum physics lab, whistling something about staying alive. Dr. Voss watched her go, then turned to his team. New research priority, he whispered. Finding out why humans think death is optional and what else they've been casually ignoring while the rest of us followed the laws of physics like chumps. The observation chamber crackled with tension as Dr. Voss faced Maya Torres across the conference table. His research team huddled behind him, using his bulk as a shield against whatever laws of physics she might casually break next. Ranger Torres Voss began, all 4 tentacles clasped formally. After 17 deaths, 39 impossibilities, and 1 incident that turned the cafeteria into abstract expressionism, we need answers. Maya lounged in her chair, boots propped on the table, idly spinning a pen that previously existed as pure quantum probability. Shoot, Doc. What's on your mind? How Dr. Frix's burst out, neural tendrils practically vibrating. How do humans simply refuse to acknowledge basic universal constants? Oh, that Maya grinned. Simple. We've got stuff to do. The research team exchanged baffled looks. Zara's bioluminescent patches flickered in confusion. Stuff? You rewrote molecular biology because of stuff. Sure, Maya nodded. See, dying's super inconvenient when you've got deadlines. Can't file mission reports when you're dead, right? Bad for career advancement. But that's not Nixus's crystalline form developed new fractal patterns of bewilderment. That's not how reality works. Says who Maya asked. Universe is pretty big. Lots of rules. We just figured why let a little thing like death get in the way of finishing the job. Dr. Voss pressed his sensory organs with his tertiary tentacles. Are you suggesting humans simply opted out of mortality through sheer stubbornness? Pretty much, Maya shrugged. Got tired of existence saying no. Started saying yes, works great. But the energy requirements alone, Lux protested. The quantum uncertainties, the biological impossibilities. Yeah, Maya interrupted. See, that's your problem right there. You're thinking too much about why it won't work instead of making it work anyway. Silence fell across the room as 5 alien brains tried to process this fundamental restructuring of their understanding of reality. So Dr. Voss said slowly, humans just decide what's possible. Nah, Maya grinned. We decide what's necessary. Possible sorts itself out eventually, usually with explosions. This changes everything, Nixus whispered. Every evaluation of human potential, every strategic assessment. Been nice working with you folks, Maya stood, stretching casually. But my shift's about done, and I promise to help test the new FTL drive back at base. Probably blow up a few times, but you know how it goes. As she walked toward the door, Dr. Voss called out one last question. What? What should we tell the Galactic Council about humans? Maya paused, that familiar knowing smile playing across her face. Tell them we're just getting started, and maybe warn them about the paperwork. Nobody likes incomplete paperwork. The research team watched her leave, each contemplating the terrifying implications of a species that treated universal constants as mere suggestions and death as a minor scheduling inconvenience. Begin final report, Dr. Voss said quietly. Subject species humanity. Threat level assessment, yes.